Tomorrow, the U.S. Supreme Court will likely decide on whether or not to hear the Holy Land Foundation case, in which my father is a defendant. This decision will come after 11 tumultuous years of raids, trials, arrests, and appeals. This would be the last legal recourse for my father, who is currently serving a sentence of 65 years. On the day my father was arrested, he managed to pause for a few seconds and look into my eyes and say, "Keep your head up high, because your father did nothing wrong." As I remember his inspiring words, I stand here before you today, collected, together, even as I look back to the very beginning of this story. My father co-founded the Holy Land Foundation in 1989. He's told me that he knew he'd face some challenges because American foreign policy has been in favor of Israel, and thus Palestinian sovereignty has not been a main concern. Although the Holy Land Foundation's funds were distributed across the world, a large percentage of their donations went to Palestine. So as the HLF blossomed, becoming the largest American Muslim charity, it came as no surprise that a campaign was launched against it in the 1990s, a campaign led by pro-Israeli politicians and lobby groups that repeatedly attempted to make connections between the HLF and Hamas. But authorities found no reason to close the charity. That is, until 3 months after September 11, 2001, when the Bush administration, motivated by the politics of our time, used an executive order to shut down the Holy Land Foundation. I am still in shock that the case has gone as far as it has, because in its essence, the Holy Land Foundation case is about a bold humanitarian endeavor that was put to an end. That is what this case is about. Nevertheless, the story has carried on year after year. Prosecutors use the Material Support Statute, a law enhanced by the Patriot Act that has come under fire by human rights attorneys like the Center for Constitutional Rights, which I'm hoping Michael can address. The vague nature of this law made it easy for prosecutors to claim that the Holy Land Five gave, quote, material support in the form of charity, like food, blankets, medicine, to Palestinian Zakah committees that were allegedly, quote, controlled by or worked on behalf of Hamas, and thereby they helped Hamas win the hearts and minds of the Palestinians. This was their argument in court. What's perplexing about this argument is that none of these Zakah committees, which are charity distribution centers in Palestine, are listed as designated terrorists by the Department of Treasury. In fact, defense attorneys have argued that these Zakah committees listed on the HLF indictment also received funds from American government agencies, most notably USAID, the United States Agency for International Development. Putting all the lawyerly language aside, I stand before you unbowed, proud to be the daughter of Ghassan Elashi, because as my father put it on sentencing day, quote, I had no intention in my mind and in my heart but to help the Palestinian indigenous people who are and have been facing unusual economic distress. Nothing in my life was as self-fulfilling as knowing that I could sign a check, the evidence that you have used against me. It is the only evidence you have used against me, signing the check. But that was the most enjoyable part of my life, knowing that I could sign a check to assist hundreds of Palestinian families who got displaced after their homes were demolished. Nothing was more satisfactory to me than granting scholarships to hundreds of Palestinian students who had high average grades despite the circumstances. Nothing was more rewarding to me than being a catalyst and turning the zakat into real-life assistance for orphans and needy families. This case has swallowed much of my young adult life. The raid in 2001, the arrests in 2004, the first trial in 2007, which ended in a hung jury, the second trial in 2008, in which the jury returned all guilty verdicts, the sentencing in 2009, during which my father received a lifelong sentence. My father's move to the Communications Management Unit in 2010, a prison opened during the Bush administration that limits the communications of its mostly Muslim inmates, and finally the unsuccessful appeals over the last couple of years, which brings us to now. In their October 26th conference, the Supreme Court is expected to review our petition, in which the defense team states that the HLF case, quote, presents the perfect opportunity for the court to determine whether or under what circumstances the prosecution can present anonymous witnesses. They are referring to the prosecution's star witness, an Israeli intelligence officer who testified under the false name of Avi, making it the first time in American history that an expert witness was allowed to testify using a pseudonym. Defense lawyers state that Avi's testimony violated my father's Sixth Amendment right to confront his accuser. They will also argue that prosecutors presented hearsay evidence, documents that predated the 1995 designation of Hamas, documents with unknown authors, and documents seized from co-conspirators who were not defendants in the HLF case. They are referring to a list of 300 unindicted co-conspirators. This week, as the highest court of the land decides on the fate of the Holy Land Five, it is time for me to tell my father, keep your head up high. No matter what happens in the next few days, let us not be brought down. Let us keep moving onward. Remember, Baba, we are approaching not the end, but the beginning. And you will remain in the consciousness of many until the day you are exonerated. Thank you.
We help homeless people, very much like NSO, Salvation Army, but we're unlike them because we're actually effective. This whole operation is funded by me, so there's no government funding.
Navigated by William Rodriguez, who ended up opening up the door that saved his life on that fateful day. This is the video of them meeting for the very first time.
No, really?